Hello, and welcome to another episode of Session Notes Unfiltered. This is an ABA podcast with Miss B, talking about the ins and outs of your RBT sessions, ABA sessions. This is a look into some of the right things and wrong things to do within your ABA therapy and ways to help your kid do better within that. I think this is some very important information to share and really hope it finds the right people. This podcast is not meant with any hate towards the parents. I genuinely believe the parents that are doing any of the things I mentioned that are wrong, I don't think they're doing it to be harmful. I believe these parents just want the best for their kiddos, and it's really hard to see your child upset, especially when your child is engaging in self-injurious behavior or very loud screaming tantrums. I think it's very hard to see your child who you love so much go through that. And I think a lot of parents just accidentally make these decisions because they want it to stop. And sometimes I think it happens because the parents are just so overwhelmed with whatever is going on in their day-to-day life, or maybe going through a loss of a job or a loved one, or just stressful times, because that could be so many things that they have going on, right? I think some parents are just burnt out and they do the wrong things on accident. And that's part of why I'm starting this, because I just want to share some of the most common ones I've seen. So hopefully it finds the right people and more of these parents who love their children the way I know they do can start doing better by them, because one of the things we do as an RBT, and the BCB is above us, we're thinking about the long-term goals of how this child is going to be an adult one day, and we don't want to allow them to be hindered really in life. Like, here's a good example. One of the biggest things we help with within ABA therapy, especially for the younger kids, is toilet training. And I don't think it's the ideal for us to want the goal to be that this child is just in polyps for the rest of their life, right? And I know that's different for some kids and it's harder. No judgment here. I'm just saying I don't think that's the goal. So if you're making progress within that and your kid is starting to use the facilities, that's really awesome, right? And we want to grow on that growth. We want to make that even better than it is. Like, yes, awesome, you're using the potty. You know when you have to go. This is so great. I'm so proud of you. And like, give them all the praise you can, give them rewards for it. But it shouldn't stop there. Your kid shouldn't be pulling their pants down the entire way to the bathroom, because even though if it seems a little silly right now, it's not gonna be very silly when they're a teenager or they're an adult. And that's not, we don't want to stop. We want to keep going. We want to keep growing and growing. One of the biggest struggles of my job is inconsistent parenting. That being a prime example, I've had a few kids that I've met doing this job who are doing better than some other kids I've worked with, and they've made some progress, and it's like their parents just think they jumped over the biggest hurdle. And I know that that is a big feat, and I'm so proud. But why are we stopping there? And it can feel very discouraging as the RBT working with your child when when we see the progress we are making with your kid, and we see, like, hey, this is really working, I'm doing such a good job, they're getting it, this kid is getting it, what I'm doing is working, and then maybe we don't see them for like a day or two because of a holiday, or we don't see them for a week or 2 weeks because they went on vacation, or even sometimes just over the weekend. And when we come back, how we can tell that their parents were not keeping up with what we were doing. Probably not at all. It can be very discouraging to see the kids you're working with making so much progress and then just seeing that their parents don't care the same way you do. And I'm not saying that they don't care, but they just so badly don't want to deal with the unwanted maladaptive behaviors that they basically give into them. Some of my most challenging clients get rewarded for throwing really horrible tantrums, and it becomes very obvious that that's happening even without being told. But I've had a few families admit to me who's doing it, but it becomes very obvious even without that, because I can see the regression, even if it can be slight, it can be big, whatever, depending on how far of a gap it was since you've seen them last. Because some of them will even like tell on you, even the children that are nonverbal. They'll do the gestures you do to them when you're comforting them and rewarding them. Or they'll go grab their tablet that you give them when you're rewarding them for a tantrum, or they'll grab your phone, or they'll grab the remote. The ones that are verbal, even if it's just slight, they tell on you too. Not in a direct telling me what you did way, but I have a few kids who will just repeat the phrases in a loop of what is said to them when they're screaming and crying. Basically calling themselves a baby, or saying not to cry, or, oh, I love you. Like, I've had a lot of kids do that. And this isn't an attack on the parents, because again, I know most of the parents I've met in these situations are just going through some really rough times, whatever that may entail. And no one expects their child to have autism. This isn't what anyone wished for or thought would happen in their life. It's very hard. As a mother of a child with autism, it's very hard to accept this happening to your child. It's very hard to accept them struggling in ways other kids at their age are not. It's very hard when they can't communicate with you the way you had envisioned, the way you would love. It's very hard. But as hard as that is, you should also want to make their future life better and easier, even if it's a little hard right now, to be that consistency they have and set those boundaries. Because, yeah, it is. It's hard to sit there and kind of ignore your child while they're screaming like that. I know what it does to my mom brain when my kid's screaming. It can feel like someone's like poking my brain, basically. It feels like extra noise more than other noise when your own kid is doing that. And I feel like that's part of why it's so useful to have an RBT when this is the situation, because it is different when it's not your own kid. Yes, it's upsetting. Yes, it is frustrating and can be very stressful, and it's not always fun. It is not fun to have a kid scream in your face or threaten to hit you or hit themselves, throw themselves on the floor, throw things, break things. None of that is fun or wanted. But it's easier when it's not your kid. You feel like a link to your own child. It's almost like you can feel their pain. So when they do things like that, it can really get under your skin in a way that someone who isn't yours doesn't have that power to do. So if mom or dad are having a hard week at work or a hard month or a hard year, and their kid's just screaming all the time at the top of their lungs, like bloody murder, like they're getting hurt, or your kid is saying ow for no reason, you're not even touching them in public, that's embarrassing. That's hard to deal with. It makes sense why a lot of parents wind up giving into it, even if that's not what they wanted to do. And then they also kind of get used to it the way their kid is getting used to, oh, so if I do this, I get what I want. Oh, because that's what it's teaching them. My most successful sessions and situations with clients are the ones where the parents actually care enough to ask questions and be involved, not to the point that they're taking over session. That also can't be helpful, because then your child probably isn't listening to me because they're listening to you. Yes, we want the child to listen to you, but we also need instructional control to even do what we're trying to do. We need them to be our best friend, really, and want to do the things we want to do. Like, we need them to be interested in the games we're playing or the toys we bring, so that we can be like, okay, now let's work on this. And how about we play this game and we share and we don't grab from each other's hands? How about we do the puzzle without throwing the pieces or spinning the puzzle so all the pieces fly across the floor? Why don't we try cleaning up this first and then we can play with that other toy so our room doesn't become a real big mess and it's overwhelming and we don't want to clean it? I feel like at least half of the parents I have met are usually just on their phone or on their TV or both. And then they wonder why their child wants to do the same thing. Well, monkey see, monkey do. Of course, they want to be on their device all the time. If you're sitting there and you're on your device all the time, I have had clients ages 5 and below who their parent is allowing them access to a remote for the TV, so they're just going back and back and back and forth, basically teaching themselves just horrible concentration, instant validation. And then while they're doing that, they're on a tablet or a phone. I've even had kids who are doing all three at the same time and will not pay me any attention because of it. And it's very discouraging. I know it's not something that is, again, ideal. No one wants their kid to struggle in these ways. But if your ways of having them cope are always going to be by using their devices, that's all they're going to know in their future. And that really shouldn't be their norm. That shouldn't be their base level of what helps them. For example, I had a client who was about 4 or 5, And they were given access to their parents' phone every time they would engage in self-injurious behavior. It was like the parents' go-to move that it would stop the head thrashing of this child who was very violently thrashing their head against the wall, the floor, had even broken glass windows, just hitting their heads so hard against everything. And the kid knew that this kind of behavior would wind up with them having access to somebody's phone, maybe even having a movie on the TV at the same time, one of their preferred movies. This child was also engaging in property destruction with the phones, and the screens were cracked. All of the phones within this house had cracked screens from this child doing this, because they were usually, from my observations, either smacking the phone on the floor, on a table, on the wall, throwing it across the room, hitting it with another object, and no one stopped it because the parents were almost afraid to stop it because the self-injurious behavior would start in response with some screaming, and throughout this the kid would just be smiling. I say this in such an objective way because I loved that kid. I thought that was a really awesome kid. I could tell how smart they were, even though they were not very verbal. Just seeing that kind of behavior and seeing how that kid had her parents wrapped around her finger and they were just allowing it. And no matter how I or the BCBA on that case tried to talk to the parents about things, they thought we were the problem by trying to limit the access to the devices in those instances and teach deep breathing, maybe teach humming, singing, clapping hands, just coping skills. They dropped us and became unresponsive. I pray for that kid all the time. That was a smart kid with some very inconsistent parents. It would be like a few days they would follow our instructions on what we saw was helpful, and then they would backtrack and they would not do that, and the kid would be up all night. Diving into that as well, though, one of my topics I've wanted to bring up so badly, and since I'm bringing up that kiddo, I feel like now is the perfect time to do so because this is a really bad inconsistency I see with parents where I understand food aversions, I understand ARFID, I really do. My child has a lot of food aversions. My child hates a lot of things, very texture oriented kid I have. But that doesn't mean your child should be on a sugar diet, especially a kid who has autism, so is already usually struggling with some sort of behavior you don't want to be happening that isn't good for them and their well-being. Probably shouldn't have a sugar addiction that's very clear to an outside guest in your home, like an RBT. This is not judgmental, but I'm just so flabbergasted by how most, at least like 90% of the clients I have had, all I see them eating is sugar, whether it is cookies, candy, just sweet snacks, like not fruit or anything good for them, no good sugars. It's all just sugar, 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 really badly. And also just drinking sugary drinks, like not even a little bit watered down. And their parents don't seem to know or have any slight common sense to see that that's a sugar addiction. If you're flipping out because you can't have your drink to the point you're going to hurt yourself over being given water or being given your drink with half water, how do none of these parents see they're creating a sugar addiction? Just really blows my mind, because that's something, even as a mother with a child with autism, I guess I'm a little lucky because my kid doesn't really like candy. My kid likes some cookies. My kid likes certain cakes or muffins, but not everything. Does not like ice cream. My kid likes chocolate milk, but when I give my kid chocolate milk, it's actual chocolate milk. I have seen parents who exclusively give their child Yoo-hoo, and that's all they drink 24/7. I've seen parents who are giving their kids Hawaiian Punch and Kool-Aid 24/7, not even a little bit watered down. And I say these things the way I'm saying them because the kid that was drinking Yoo-hoo 24/7 had their teeth rot really badly to the point they needed their teeth removed and had caps in their mouth on most of their teeth. Their parents acted clueless, as if they had no common sense that it was their fault. And they had created these issues. The kids drinking Hawaiian Punch or Kool-Aid exclusively were chewing on the insides of their mouth because it was marinated in sugar, and they were chewing on their mouths until it bled. This is a different form of self-interest behavior where you're just chewing on your lips and your mouth and you can't stop. But in this way, yeah, they're hurting themselves, but it's also because their mouth tastes like candy. And in every one of the homes that I have seen the sugar addiction happening, those have been the homes with the highest level of behaviors. Those have been the homes with the kids who scream the most, throw the most tantrums, or just like the most animated versions of the tantrums I've seen. And I'm not a sugar-free or gluten-free or whatever type of diet home. Sugar's fun in moderation, but sugar literally rots your body and your teeth and your stomach, your intestines, your bloodstream, your mind. If your children are living off of mainly sugar, of course they're not going to want to eat the things that are good for them. They taste like crap in comparison. You're offering your kid Oreos over broccoli, they're not going to eat the broccoli, no matter what you cover it with. Maybe if you cover it with sugar. Cupcakes or carrots? What are they going to pick? I wonder. No, it's not easy, especially once you've done the wrong thing. Then it's even harder to do the right thing, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't even try. That doesn't mean you should give up. just because it's hard, because it's really worth it when you create these transitions to, oh, well, maybe first try this and then you get that cool snack that you want after. Maybe if you try this with me, we can play with the tablet after. Oh, honey, go clean up that thing first. Then we can play with the new thing that you want to play with so bad. Does that sound good? And no, it doesn't always have to be like a question like that. It really should be more of an instruction. But the point is, you gotta pick your battles. Bad consistency, like a sugar diet, is not helpful to any kid, but especially a kid with autism. Now they're hyperactive along with whatever they're struggling with. Now their brain is like electric. Now they're really wired from all of the sugar they're eating. And you know what happens after a sugar rush? They're gonna crash really hard unless you keep up with the sugar. And that's not a good idea. I feel bad even saying these things, but I feel like this should be common sense that children aren't supposed to eat sugar constantly, and it's just so shocking to see how common this is. I might not do everything perfectly or right. I will never claim to be perfect. I make my mistakes too. I choose to learn from them and do better. And one of the best things I do that I see no parents really doing, but is recommended by your doctor, is to basically give your child all water with a little bit of juice in it if you even give them a flavor in it. And I'm really good with that. My kid might not eat fruit really by itself. Maybe we'll take a bite of like a strawberry or an apple here and there. But if I put that fruit in a muffin, my kid loves those. And I will count that as a win. If I put that fruit in a pancake, sometimes that works. Sometimes it does not because texture again. Vegetables are a little bit harder. I am working on finding a solution for that. I will let you know if I find one. I did find out recently that my kid likes cornbread, so maybe if I put something in the cornbread and add cheese, I'll let you know how it goes. But yeah, I think it's very important to pay attention to the sessions. And if you're even going through the trouble and the whole process of having an RBT come into your home and having the calls with a BCBA to talk about all of these things, and especially if you're seeing progress with what they're doing, you should be following suit and you should be taking all of the advice you can from them and what they're doing to get your kid to work through their days better, to communicate with you and your loved ones better. Consistency and boundaries are one of the biggest parts of this. They play hand in hand and they're very important. You have to keep them going even when it's hard. I'm not saying to be cold or heartless with your kid, but sometimes love has to be tough with kids in a way of setting a boundary. I'm not saying I don't believe in spanking personally, so nothing like that, but like if you love them, you'll make sure that they have a better life than the way that they might be trying to live it. Because when they're older, they're not going to get everything they want if they throw a tantrum. They might get themselves in trouble or locked up or called crazy or violent. And that's not the goal I want for any of the kids I meet. That hurts my heart so much to even think about. And at the end of the day, we're just trying so hard to help these kids be as awesome as we see that they are, because every single kid I've met, no matter what negative things I share here, every single kid I've met is so awesome, so sweet, so amazing. And it's just so upsetting to see them backtrack or them lose services because their parents don't want to admit that they're doing things wrong. Your pride shouldn't be more important than your child's future. These kids are magical. Please help us to help them show the world. These kids are amazing. And other people deserve to know that too. These kids deserve to know that about themselves. These kids deserve a way to express themselves and to help themselves cope in healthy ways. Well, thank you for listening. We will be back soon. This is Session Notes Unfiltered, and I Miss B, signing out.